you have to have that 100% belief, that 100% conviction that you're on the right path. This is your personal legend. This is no longer just a dream or some imaginary goal. It's your personal legend. It's your fate, your purpose in life.
Believe me when I say, believe me when I say, believe me when I say, not everyone likes peace, not everyone likes peace, not everyone likes peace, not everyone likes peace, it's just me, Bellissi.
Hello and welcome to the new podcast, Not Everyone Likes Peas, with me, Bellissi. I'm an independent artist, a writer, a producer and poet. And I wanted to do this first episode on what it means to be an independent artist. And I thought it'd be good to talk about a book that I read many years ago, and it is my favourite book of all time, and it's The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And if you haven't read that book, it's about this young guy, and he's on a journey and he's looking for his treasure, his truth, his dreams. And in the book, they refer to it as personal legend. And I really resonated with that. And related it to my own life and my own journey and my own dreams. And what I took from it was the difference between a dream and a personal legend is a dream is not always obtainable, whereas your personal legend is. It's set in stone. It's your fate. And so it really changed my life then, because I thought, well, what is my personal legend? You know, I know what my dreams are, but where is my fate? Why am I here? I certainly have that question all the time. Why am I here? What's my purpose? What is my personal legend? And it was the art. It is music. And for some others out there, it might be business, family, wife and children, travel, whatever. But for me, it was always the art. And I think this works perfectly when talking about what it is to be an independent artist, because you have to have that 100% belief, that 100% conviction that you're on the right path. This is your personal legend. This is no longer just a dream or some imaginary goal. It's your personal legend. It's your fate, your purpose in life. And with that truth, with that conviction, that pushes you on every single day. But I think the sad thing is, or the crux of it is, that you may not always achieve your personal legend, because if you don't have that realization that you're on the wrong path, then you're going to be chasing something that you believe is your personal legend, your dream, and you'll never achieve it, because that's not your fate. And the universe, or if you're spiritual or religious, God is always trying to pull you back onto that right path. And I used to have this all the time, and I think we all do. We're all, am I on the right path? Is this right? What's the meaning of it? And blah, 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 blah. And I think these voices is the universe, or God pulling you back and saying, no, you're on the wrong path. And that's why a lot of people, including me, do these crazy things. They completely turn their back on their old life, friends, family, country, everything, and move away because they've had this realization, or I certainly had that realization, that I am on the wrong path and I need to follow what my personal legend is. And it's great being an independent artist, but it can suck sometimes. And I liken it to a dog chasing his tail. If you've seen a dog, they're going round and round and round trying to get that tail, and now and again, you'll get a little bite of it, but away it slip, and around and around and around and around you go again. And that is like, chasing dreams and chasing your personal legend. And some days it can feel like that. And I've had people say to me, hey mate, you're just chasing your tail. Well, I may well be, but if you've ever seen a dog chasing his tail, he's a happy little fucker. And so am I. And so nearly 50 years old, I am content, because I am on that right path. I am chasing my personal legend. I may be going around and around and around on some days chasing my tail, but I will get there. So what does it mean for me being an independent artist? And I think the biggest thing is freedom. It's that freedom to do whatever you want. And I think that is being a true artist, is that you can on those days, especially when you're creating, you can do anything that you want to do. And I think the main difference for me between an indie artist and a signed artist is that freedom. Now, I know your big stars and everything do have that freedom when it comes to labels, but they've got a massive say in what you do because they're paying the bills, up until you're earning big bucks and then you're paying their bills. And so they've got a real vested interest in you and want you to succeed. But more than that, they want you to make money. And being independent, there's that freedom that you have all the decisions, you make all the decisions, you are the decision maker. And there's a flip side to that. It may not always go wrong because if you're with a label or, other producers or mix engineers, they may say, well, to be fair, I think I would change this or I would drop that track. Or, if you're releasing an album, they may say, no, track 3, that's your fucking killer track. That's going to blow. Whereas when you're on your own, you may not know that. And because you're so close to the music all the time and you have friends and family that you can put the music out to. And I do trust their ears, but they're not professionals. And at the end of the day, it still falls on the independent artist to make that decision. And whilst we're on the subject of being independent, I want to clarify what I deem as an independent artist. And it is these things: you write, you compose, you record, you produce, you mix, and you master. You send off to an aggregator to be distributed, and then you do all the promotion. Now, some of you may disagree with this, but for me, that is being an independent artist. You are on your own. And I do know some artists out there that call themselves indie artists, but basically they've written a song and they've given it to a producer and a mix engineer. Now, for me, I think that's fucking madness to call yourself independent and do that, because there's producers out there that are fucking amazing artists and they get this shitty little song in front of them. It may not be a shitty, it may be a great song, but then they will transform it into this epic that you will hear on the radio or in your movies or whatever. And so I think being independent, you need to do all those things to classify yourself as truly independent. And that's what I do. Now, if you want to call yourself indie and you do that, that's up to you. That's your fucking choice. But I personally classify as independent as doing all those things. And that's what I do right from the start. I will write, compose, and do all the bits in between right up to its promotion. And that's me. And that makes me happy as well that I've done all that. And there's a massive flip side to that not working with these great producers or paying for a mix engineer and doing it all yourself, it may not sound as good as the tracks that are being played on the radio. But I think that's the sacrifice, and it still keeps the art there, and there is a rawness to it. But I love that rawness, and it's not just because it's because you're an indie artist, like that fucking twat on the radio, Moyles, said, why is indie artist never played on radio or whatever he said, and he said because it's shit. And there is some truth in that. Some of it is shit, but some of it is also the greatest music out there, but it's undiscovered. And it is climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing. So the other differences between indie and signed is that you are on your own and there is no PR, there's no producers and mix engineers, and there's certainly no funding. So it can be hard on your own, and it also can be very, very lonely as well. So you've got to get over that bit. And also being on your own, you have to have 100% belief in yourself, 100% conviction that you're doing the right thing. And that is really hard because some tracks that you make and some tracks that I make absolutely fucking bomb, and you never know what's going to bomb or what's going to pop, really. But the next day you got to get up and do it again. This is your 9 to 5. This is your job. This is what you're doing. This is what you've chosen. You've got to expect that you're going to make some mistakes and just roll with them and learn all the time. Learn. So my personal indie journey started in around 2016. I'd been in bands before, and I did enjoy it at the time, and I did learn a lot from it, and it led me to where I am here. But what I did learn, the biggest thing, is that I didn't want to be in a band. I didn't want to play with other people. And the biggest thing is I did not want to sing other people's songs. Fucking no way did I want to sing other people's songs. I'm not a fucking karaoke singer. I did not want to do that. And I know it works really well with some bands. You know, there's a four-piece band and every one of them knows their exact place in the band, or they all collaborate in songwriting. But for me, that doesn't work at all. I want to be on my own, and so I will take the blows of being on my own. Fuck it. And my personal experience of being in bands, it was really good back in 2000 and when was it, around 10 or whatever. You know, I did join a band, but the lead singer was never really interested in doing anything that I would want to contribute. So if I would write songs, he wasn't really interested. And so in 2016, I went on my own and I became a solo singer. I had my acoustic, my loop pedal, and I went on the road. I did a few gigs as RBJ back then. And I wanted to take it a bit more serious. And I couldn't afford a producer or a mix engineer. I couldn't afford studio time. And so it was just me. And I started out really simple. And for the people out there that want to start out as independents or start in the music industry or make music, you don't need a lot. You could probably just do it on your phone and upload it to an aggregator and away you go. And so for me, I started with a simple MacBook. I used GarageBand because it was free. I used simple, cheap adapters so I could plug in my guitar into the MacBook. I did have a MIDI keyboard that you can see behind me, which is absolutely brilliant and integral, really, to creating music. But that's how I started. And I mixed and mastered, produced all my own stuff at that time under RBJ and released my first album. And it was really good for a little time. But RBJ was a bit, he was singer-songwriter, a little bit folk, which is great. But I did feel constricted after sort of a year or two under RBJ. And I always began in punk music. That's where I sort of, that was my first love of music, punk and rock and stuff like that. And so I wanted to incorporate that more into the music. But I didn't want to do it under RBJ. So I transformed into Trans Am 40. And Trans Am 40 was a lot more punk. And that's what I was producing at that time. So I did release quite a few albums under Trans Am 40. And there are some albums still out there on Spotify that still reflect that punkier side. But the two big albums that I did release at that time, I've now pulled down from the streaming platforms because they don't reflect who I am now as an artist. And so after Trans Am 40, again, I felt constricted. It was like back to that band life, really. It was like somebody else was telling me what to write. Well, no, you can't write that. Or I was like signed to a label because they were there going, the execs were going, oh no, you can't do that because that's not punk, that's not your genre. And that's the beauty of being independent. I don't want to be fucking genreized. I don't play in any particular genre. I'll play what I want on the day and how I'm feeling. And that's what I want to give people, how I'm feeling at that time, you know? And so I decided that Trans Am was not right for me. And then that's when Bellissi was born. And that's who I am. I am Bellissi. And I think I've always been that artist, but sort of just finding my feet along the way. And the beauty of being who I am now is that I can do the punk, I can do the singer-songwriter, the folk, the ballads, whatever I want, really. And I think I showed that in my last album, 1974, which came out last year. And although it's a very melancholy album, there are loads of there are loads of different genres within that. There's punk, there's some real good folk tracks on there, some singer-songwriters, some ballads, some just out-and-out pop songs. And being an artist, especially independent, you can play around with all different genres, and especially when you want to make an album and sort of tell a story, I find that you can tell a better story by just, going all over the landscape rather than just wandering down this one path, this one genre. I can't really tell a story just going down one path. I want to take you over there or take you over there, or sometimes I want to go back. And so I do feel a lot happier now being Bellissi, being this artist, where I can be a lot more experimental with my music and just do what I want. My day to day as an independent begins between 6 and 7, and it's always the sort of admin side, like any other business out there. Any other small business or big business. It starts with your admin side. So for me, that's socials. So it's going on socials, checking my posts or making posts. That's answering DMs, emails, contacting people that I need to, and it's also about the numbers. And we're always told not to chase numbers. And it's really, really difficult, especially as an independent, because you need to know those numbers, but you can't be infatuated with those numbers, and you can't let the numbers lead you, but you still need to know the numbers, and then you're going to change things so they sort of do lead you. And for me, is the numbers is like, how well a post is performing, a reel is performing, because do I need to adapt? Do I need to change? Or is this the one? I got to keep doing things like this. This is what pulls the audience in. This is what's getting the music out there to the ears, which is what we're after. We want you to listen. And then I'll go on to the streaming platforms as well. Spotify, Apple, and Amazon, they all provide independent artists with the figures, what was played yesterday, last week, or indeed the lifetime of the song or the album. So you can see how your advertising campaign, your promo campaign is working. And you can also see, which is important, which songs are performing well. And in the case of the 509 Blues that I released as part of the EP Mail a few months back, which I was not going to do anything with the 509 Blues. It was just an album track, if you like. But it started climbing and people were really, really enjoying it. And I could see the numbers, the streaming numbers going up and up and up and up and up. So I thought, that changed my promo campaign, and I had to do a music video for it because I thought, well, if this is, this has got legs, let's give it some more traction. And chasing numbers or looking at your numbers allows you to adapt, your day to day, and especially when it comes to promo. But the last little bit on chasing numbers, you can't be infatuated by them, and you can't let them get you down, because they are very, very depressing. There's a track that you've written, you've put everything in, you've produced it, everyone around you is going, this is amazing. You put it out there, you check on your 7 days, it's had 4 listens. Nobody's streaming it. Now, it either hasn't got to a lot of people or they really don't like it. It's not very good. And that really can be depressing, but you've still got to go, because you never know what's going to, pop. You don't know the one it's going to be, and there's going to be a lot of bombs, but you've still got to carry on and push through and be happy and smile, tears of a clown. This is what we do. So after the admin, the business side, then it's mixing for me. There's always something in the studio to mix, always, because I'm creating constantly. And so the morning, certainly early morning, is spent mixing and mastering. That doesn't mean, if I'm creating something, if there's an album or an EP that I want to create, that will be there as well. But it's mostly mixing. And then after lunch, sort of around 2-3 o'clock time, that's when I'll record vocals, and again in the early evening. I find it's best for my voice at those times. I live in a really fucking busy neighborhood. You can probably hear all the trucks and bikes and some twat screaming now and again. And you can't have that when you're recording vocals, For some punky tracks, that might be fucking A1, but no, not always. So it's mixing in the morning, vocals in the afternoon, and then I would say the whole afternoon really is more creative. And then in the evening, it falls back to sort of socials, and then I go to bed, but then I might have an idea for a song, or something's just happened on the socials, or a track's doing something, and I may need to come back in the studio and do a bit of work, or just do something I can do on the phone, especially when it comes to the socials. For the last couple of months, it's been concentrating on mostly mixing sort of all day long, and that's because I've got a new EP that comes out in August and a single on Wednesday, the 21st of June. And so that is mixing and mastering all day long just to get this EP out there. And then maybe in the evening I'll do a little bit of creativity, playing the guitar or piano, or maybe just messing around with a few tracks for future. For artists out there that want to get into music, it's, as everybody tells you, it's never been a better time, because really it's so easy. You can record something on your phone and you can upload it. It's a small cost. Or you can spend a bit more money and invest in your future and in your career, and get an aggregator. I use DistroKid. For those out there that don't know what DistroKid is, it's an aggregator. So you send them the files, your music files and the artwork, and they will upload it and send it to all the digital streaming platforms. There's like 100 or 200 of them. It's really good and it's really reasonable. There's other distributors out there, CD Baby, and I think Universal do one, but I use DistroKid and I'm happy with them. But that's me. And to get started, like I say, you could probably just do a lot of it on your phone. But for me, as I said before, it was a MacBook, and I used GarageBand. And I thought GarageBand, it's really good because it's free. And especially if you're an Apple user and eventually you want to go into Logic, which is what I use now, Logic Pro, GarageBand gives you a great foundation to learning the simplicities of the recording and mixing and mastering process. And then when you can afford to pay for Logic Pro, or you want to upgrade, then at least you'll know your way around the software. Whereas there's other software that I have used before, I won't go into the names of them, I can't get my head around it at all. And it's just because I started with the Apple products, and so, this is not promoted by Apple, and there's loads of other good things out there, but it's just what I use. It works for me. Where it becomes really difficult is the mixing stage, or it certainly does for me, but I do know it does for a lot of independent artists. The mixing is the most alien experience in the whole creative process. It's the hardest job for me. It's the hardest job being an independent artist, that and the promotion. But the good thing with mixing is there's so much material out there. And I mean, you can go on YouTube and you can watch numerous amounts of tutorials on mixing. Sometimes too many. My advice to you, if you are starting out, is to watch a good handful of them, but don't fucking get too infatuated with them, because you just get confused. One person's telling you to cut this EQ, the other person say, oh no, boost that, and then you'll go on to reverb and you're like, oh, it's too much. It's too much. So just find someone that you like, find someone that you trust, and keep watching them. There's loads on there, and I will include some in the links below of who I like. It doesn't mean you have to use them, but I do trust what they tell me, as I've used it and it works. But the other thing is, you don't, just because it works for them doesn't mean it's going to work for you, because that might not be the sound that you're after, so you don't want it too clean and too crisp if that's not what you're going for. So you've got to play it by ear. But certainly as you get more and more advanced, then you can start looking up the great producers, the Rick Rubins and the people like that, go into their studio and see them, they're doing tutorials and talking you through the whole process, or how they, produce some of the greatest songs of all time, as far as I'm concerned. And another thing, once you start releasing the music and you've produced it yourself and you've mixed it yourself, don't expect miracles. There's the producers out there, especially the ones you're going to be watching, or the ones that you hear on the radio and in the movies and stuff. They have a lot of funding to start with, so their studios are amazing. It's analog and digital, and you will, if you are just using digital, you're going to find it very difficult to get that sound that's been made on analog. That warmth to it. So don't be too despondent. Get it as best as you can. And I always believe a good song will carry. It doesn't matter if it's not mixed absolutely perfect. It doesn't sound like, some shit on the freaking radio, Adele or Ed Sheeran or whatever. I'm not dissing Ed Sheeran, but it may not sound as good as that. But if it's a cracking song, then that will come through. There's songs that you can listen to by the Chili Peppers, by the White Stripes, and I think the production quality is not very good at all. Certainly the loudness on Seven Nation Army, if you listen to that and compare it with other tracks, the production quality is not brilliant, but the song is fucking ace. So you don't care. You just turn it up. And people will do that with your music. So get it as best as you can. You don't want it sounding shit or too rough, but a little bit raw is okay. My journey in music or in art began when I was 9 or 10 years old. My first love was movies. I'm infatuated with movies still now, and it was the stories. I loved going to see what they're going to tell me, what story, where they're going to take me. I don't care about special effects or back then actors. I couldn't give a fucking monkeys. It was the story, So every month, my dad would take me to the cinema, and we'd see what story I was going to be told. And I began writing then, and I wrote my first book called Pinnacle Woods, which I've still got somewhere upstairs. And it's a very simple story, but that's where I always say I began in art, in creating. And we was always a musical family. There was always vinyl spinning all the time, and all types of music as well, especially sort of the late 70s and the 80s. You had everything. And so the mix with writing stories and the love of movies and then the music, I began to write songs. The only trouble was, although we was a music family, nobody played any instruments. I had a keyboard. I think it was my sister's keyboard, and I played with that now and again, but it didn't sound very good. So I never really played anything at all. And this took me to in my 20s when I started a little bit more serious in songwriting, but I still couldn't play any instruments. And I did start songwriting then. I even sent away some of the tapes, recorded it on a little tape player, but it was just me singing, which wasn't very good. But I sent it to a load of producers and PR and labels and publishers, and I did get a bite. And I went to meet a guy called Mr. Payne, his name was, in London. And it was a great experience, first time me on my own in London going to meet this guy. And I really didn't know what to expect, but it was a great experience. And long story short, he said he was working with someone that was interested in working with me and doing a collaboration, and they had some music ready to go to put to my vocals and my lyrics. And after the meeting, we spoke a few times, but then it just fizzled out, and I never heard from him again. And I don't know what happened to him, but I didn't. And so from there, I did sort of bin music a little bit, or certainly the songwriting side of it. I did become a little despondent, as we all do. I did play around with some musical instruments. Then I bought my first acoustic guitar just from a charity shop in the town. But I couldn't fucking play it. It sounded shit when I did it anyway. It certainly didn't sound like all the greats that I was listening to. So away in the loft that went. And then I thought it'd be a good idea to buy a drum kit. I mean, every lad wants to play drums, right? I certainly did. And I was living in a terraced house at that time. So you can imagine the fucking thrill of the neighbours when little me turns up with a drum kit. I was not impressed. And I couldn't play that either. I bashed it out for a few days, pissed off all the neighbourhood, and then in the shed the kit went. And so it did take a back seat then, the music, but then I got my passion for writing back, and I started writing more poetry, short stories, and I wrote a couple of novels around that time. And this then led to around 2009, 2010 when I joined the ambulance service. And I met this guy. He was a guitarist, he was an ex drummer, a really good songwriter. And he wanted to form a band. And I said, well, I write songs. I love making music. And he said, well, we need a drummer, we need a guitarist, another guitarist, and we need a bass player. And I said, well, I have a drums, so I've got a drum kit, but I can't fucking play it. So he said, well, I'll come round and I'll show you a few patterns, a few licks, and we'll see how we go. And sure enough, I was living in a different house then, so we had a separate garage, so we didn't piss off the neighbours as much. And we started writing songs, all original stuff. And I think we wrote about, I don't know, 8 or 10 songs in that garage, just the two of us. When we realised, well, we need a band then. We need a rhythm guitarist and we need a bass player, which we did, all from the ambulance station. So the four of us had this band, and we did a good number of local gigs, all original stuff. I was on drums, and it was great fun. But it didn't end too great. And we did this for about 18 months or so. But because I think I was surrounded in music again and songwriting, that my personal legend was coming back. You know, the universe and was screaming at me, you know, you're on your path. This is where you're meant to be. And so I started writing songs, and I would take it to the front man, the lead singer, and say, oh, I've written this song, what do you think of this? And he'd go, oh, yeah, it's all right. In the fucking bin it went. And I did this sort of 10 or 20 times, and realised that he's never going to sing your songs. He's not interested in that, which is fair enough. You know, this was his thing. That's fine. So I left. I then formed another band, and it was a bit punkier as well, which suited me. And I took the place of the front man, the lead singer, and I was writing 90% of the music and the songs at that time. But again, other band members, like I did before, they wanted some of the limelight. They'd been writing songs, and there was a guy in the band that was a good songwriter, and so it's fair enough that he wanted those songs, you know, to be sang by me and be performed by me. But I didn't enjoy it at all. I have no fucking interest in singing other people's songs. You know, I'm not fucking Elvis. I'm not a karaoke singer. No interest. That works for other people, fine. But it really didn't work for me, and so I left that band as well. And then in 2016, I moved away from the town. I changed jobs. Everything changed, and so that's when I became independent. And like I said, it was the only offer on the table. I couldn't afford studio time or producers. All my so-called friends that I had back in the town, or the musicians that I knew, I'd move, you know, hundreds of miles away from, so I had no contact with them. So it was just me, and that's where my independent journey began. I just want to talk through my last EP, Mail, which came out in April. And I want to talk about what the songs were about and the creative process in writing them. The first track on the EP was Shannon Day. Now, Shannon Day began as 80%, I would say, of my tracks do with drums. And I guess it's where because I began as a drummer, you know, I like to start with that. I like to start with that foundation. But I know a lot of people disagree with this, or I didn't until sort of about a year ago. And I was watching this producer on YouTube. He's a fantastic producer and mix engineer, and I do trust him. Like I was talking about before, find the people that you trust, and I do. And he was talking about drum tracks and when to do them in the creative process. And he said, never, ever, ever start with drums. Don't do it. It's a no-no. And he said, in fact, it's the last thing that he will do on a track. And I couldn't do that. I found that so alien. I mean, there are some tracks that I do, you know, just start with the acoustic or have a vocal in my head, and that's how it comes. But most of the times I need that drum track down. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to be the final drums or the final beat that you're going to hear on the track. But I need that foundation that I can build the other stuff on. And then later on, if I want to ditch those drums and write a new drum track, that's fine. But I do need something to start with. And that's how Shannon Day began, with drums and then a simple electric guitar riff over the top. And the name Shannon Day came really, really quick. And so I knew it was about Shannon Day, but I didn't know who she was, where she'd been, or where she was going. And it wasn't until I started creating the track, and what I do is I get all the music down as good as I can, but it's still rough, and then find its melody. So I'll just have the mic and I'll listen to the track and the track again and again, and mumble something until I find its melody. And when I got to the chorus, I started singing Destruction State, Fatherless Son, I am the only one. And then I had this realization that it's about her father. That it's her father has sadly passed away. It's his funeral. Shannon Day's going back to Ireland to his funeral. And then I'm thinking, they didn't really get on very well. It was a fractious relationship. And so I started writing a backstory for Shannon, and that she didn't really get on with her father. Her father was a very, very tough man, but she loved him. And then she found herself more like him, so she had his strength, and that's sort of the arc of the story and of Shannon Day. The next track was The Fool, and this was an easy track to write, and it come from my own head, my own feelings of jealousy and paranoia. And I am such a jealous, paranoid guy, and I don't know why. I always think that people are out there to get me, or that they're all going to leave me and betray me. And I don't know why I have these feelings, because no one has ever betrayed me or left me or hurt me. But I do, especially in relationships. And also around that time, I was listening to Lennon, as we sometimes do, and one of his greatest songs, Jealous Guy. And in Jealous Guy is like, I'm really sorry, I'm just a jealous guy. And that sort of influenced the writing of The Fool. But the difference is with The Fool, he's gone. He can't stay with her anymore. He sees his wife, his partner, undressing with another man, and he even says, I knew that man would come. And so he had to go. And it is a sad track, but at the same time, I think, he's doing the right thing, because even if she's not having the affair, he sees that he can't stay with her, not with the way he thinks. And so by the time she wakes, he will be gone. The next track was the 509 Blues. And this track nearly didn't make the final cut. Because it was just a play track for me. I didn't think a great deal of it. I liked it. It was good fun to sing and play, but I didn't know, is it really right for this EP male? But in the end, I included it, and it did really well. It was one of the tracks I was talking about earlier, that when you're looking at the numbers, and that one was climbing. And so I did include it. And how it came about is, I love blues music. I've always been passionate about blues music, and I've always wanted a slide for my guitar. And my amazing wife at Christmas, she bought me this metal and glass slide. Now, I couldn't play the fucking thing. I've never played one. So on YouTube you go, and found out what best keys to play in, and found out what's the best tuning and chords to play and things like that. And then I started messing around. And the first riff that I came up with was the riff used, and the one that's now on 509 Blues. And it was literally the first time. It's completely out of fucking tune, and on its own it doesn't sound very good, but I loved it when it was all put together, and I think it's really fun. And then when I started to think about its melody and what vocals they were, as soon as I hit play, I had 415 on the 6 and 9, and I knew straight away he's on a journey. So all I had to do is just follow this chap on a journey and write down what I saw. And that became the 509 Blues. The next track on the EP is the saddest track on the EP. And how it came about, I was having a pretty crummy day, as we do now and then. And I just kept singing, and I don't know if I can go just on and on. And I kept singing and singing and singing this line. And I grabbed my phone and I recorded it quick. And then went in the studio and started expanding it, adding more lyrics to it, and put some very simple music to it. And I didn't want a story arc on it. I didn't want it, it starts off sad and then he fixes himself and then, oh, it's a happy ending. I didn't want that. There wasn't a happy ending. It ends with, and I can't take this anymore. And I kept it very short on purpose. I wanted it around 2 minutes, just a very short song. And that was Push. The last track on the EP, which was my favourite at that time, was The Forest of Eyes. And this comes about because I always feel like I'm being watched, always. And I say that being an independent is lonely. Well, fucking hell, I feel like there's people here all the time. Maybe I'm just fucking crazy, but I feel like there's eyes on me all the time. I feel like I'm on a movie set, that there's cameras everywhere. Everything I do is being analysed. Everything I do is being scrutinised. And I watched this programme once. I don't know if you remember it, The Actors Studio. And on there was Jeremy Irons, the actor, and he was talking about this, that when he's walking down the street, he feels like he's being watched all the time. There's always a camera on him, and I was like, fucking hell, man, that's me. That's exactly how I feel, and I've never heard anyone else describe that before. And so The Forest of Eyes is exactly that, is existing in a world where you are constantly being watched, even though you are completely on your own. There's eyes everywhere. You're always being analysed. And I really like that track. And that was the last track on Mail. I've just finished my new EP, which comes out in August. And the first single from that comes out on the 21st of June. And that's called She's Safe. Maybe later on I'll do an episode and break that down, or the process down. I hope you enjoyed this episode and you learned something from it. If there's anything else you want to know, please contact me. Please subscribe to this channel and follow me on my socials, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Thanks so much. Take care.
Believe me when I say, believe me when I say, not everyone likes peas. Not everyone likes peas. Not everyone likes peas. Not everyone likes peas. It's just me, Bellissi.